Welcome to Trashmagination, a podcast about reimagining trash. I'm Carla Brown. Today I'm going to focus on wine corks and why I think they are a great starter material to collect if you want to get into this idea of creative reuse. What makes wine corks a great beginning place is that they're pretty socially acceptable to collect. Some people do collect them for sentimental reasons already. For example, I've seen people who collect the corks from special occasions, and they'll label the cork with the date and the occasion, and they'll put them in a big glass bowl in their dining room. The thing about wine corks that makes them so easy to collect is, unlike some trash where you have to clean it up, wine corks are pretty much ready to save as soon as you pull them out of the bottle. They might have a very faint smell, but it's kind of a nice smell. If you start collecting wine corks and then you realize, I don't want to make anything out of these, I don't have ideas, they are so in demand with crafters. And so if you collect a couple hundred and then you realize this is not for me, it's super easy to find somebody who will take them. I just put it up on FreeCycle. Hey, I've got 200, 300 wine corks. I did that once and I just got inundated by requests. It's not like some other types of trash where if you say, I've got 200 yogurt containers, chances are nobody's going to want that. For example, I have a friend named Monique, and she has an Etsy store called Mojo Makery. And she has been making wedding name cards from corks for quite a few years now. She's created this whole side hustle that involves cutting the wine corks in a certain way so that they stand up and they'll hold the little name card. And she has sold thousands of dollars worth of these little name cards, which is pretty impressive. I have made 3 projects in my Trashmagination journey that use wine corks, and I'll just talk about them now. The most popular one is my bath mat. That by far has the most traffic on my website. If I look in Google Analytics, it's always in the top 10. So I'm going to talk mostly about that project. But 2 other projects that I've made. One is these little drums. So I do taiko, which is a type of Japanese drumming. So I made little crafts that look like those drums. And then I also designed a little Cub Scout action figure because my son's Cub Scout troop was learning about creative reuse. And so I designed this craft for them to do that. So if you're interested in the drum craft or the Cub Scout action figure craft, I'll put links to those in the show notes. I got the idea for the bath mat from a blog called Crafty Nest. But the most common questions that I get from people who see my bath mat, they ask, is it holding up? Is it holding together? Because, bathrooms are a place with a lot of wear and tear, a lot of moisture. So I made my bath mat about 4 years ago, and it's still working great. Now, it is in the guest bathroom, not the bathroom where we are in there every single day. So it's not as high traffic. And I have had to repair it once or twice a year where the corner corks start coming loose. And so I think if I did this craft again, I might actually put double the sewing on the corks that are on the outer corners. Cork is cool because it's already naturally water repelling and antifungal. So you don't have to put any sealants or any glues or anything weird to keep them holding together themselves. The only thing that I'm having to repair is the fact that these corks are attached to a rubbery mat to keep it from slipping, and sometimes they're coming loose from that. I haven't had to replace a single cork. The next question people ask me is, where did I come up with all the wine corks that I needed to make the mat? And the truth is, I don't even drink wine. I mean, very rarely, like maybe 2 bottles a year. That speaks to creating systems for creative reuse. And this works really easily if you work in a workplace. Now, in 2013, when I was making this bath mat, I was in a workplace. I just sent out an email to my colleagues. I said I was collecting wine corks. I put a labeled bucket, and boom, it would get filled really quickly. And actually, I collected a bunch of different materials for different Trashmagination projects. And by far, the wine cork bucket got full the fastest. Again, I think it speaks to the fact that it's pretty socially acceptable to collect wine corks because you don't have to clean them and they're kind of cute, actually. If you don't work in a workplace where you can just ask everyone to start collecting it, like right now I'm a solopreneur, so I don't have that resource. But in this case, I'll just put up on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and I'll ask my neighbors, and I'll collect an object much more slowly, but it does work. And I put a little bucket out on my front porch for my neighbors to put it in so they don't have to bug me every time they want to give me something for my Trashmagination project. So I'll give you a warning though, like about collecting other materials other than wine corks. So for example, I have collected individual yogurt containers in the past. And this is more challenging because people's definition of clean varies. And most of the time, what I have received is very clean. But very infrequently, somebody will put something in the bucket that's kind of gross. And so it is a challenge of creative reuse. It is a challenge of communicating to people what you're doing. But it's still worth it, and I still think it's something you can work out in order to pursue your creative reuse projects. In terms of where you should place your bucket, where you're going to collect stuff like wine corks, I would recommend that you put it in your cubicle rather than out in an anonymous location like a lunchroom, because the problem is that people will put just about anything in the bucket if it's just somewhere random. Anything that they feel like, gosh, I feel like this should be able to be recycled, but they didn't do the research to find out how it could be recycled. I mean, I got some really random stuff in buckets when I put it in anonymous locations. Most of the time that was fine, or I would just put it in the trash for them. But once it was really nasty, which was I came to my desk in the morning and there was this big sort of tangled up pile of twine that smelled like horse manure. And I think someone thought I would find a creative reuse solution for the twine that held their horses' hay bales together. But wow, that was not going to happen. And so it can happen. It is a risk of being known amongst your network as somebody who does creative reuse. So I'll warn you now. And in my workplace, one of the things that was kind of funny was that often on Monday mornings, people would come up to me and they would kind of like confess to something they threw out over the weekend. It was like they were wanting me to tell them it was okay. There was nothing else you could do, something like that. People used to joke that I was taking people's confessions on Monday mornings. So how do I feel when people confess that they threw something out? So here's how I feel about it. I mean, when I was a teenager, I was in a program called Youth Leadership Council. That program taught us that leadership is leadership through service. When you live your life to your best abilities and other people see you doing it, then you are being a leader. And I have always been most comfortable with that style of leadership. I mean, everybody's life circumstances are different. There are really great reasons why some people cannot do creative reuse. My goal here is to just give ideas and also to give a little boost. If you're on the edge of doing a creative reuse idea and you're wondering if anyone else in the world would do this, yeah, I would do it. And so you can do it too. Sometimes I worry that when I make something from trash, it's like I'm condoning the fact that you bought that item that had that packaging and that it's okay to do that. And I do think that avoiding packaging in the first place is by far the best approach. And there are some really inspiring people who are experts in reducing packaging. One person I follow is Bea Johnson from Zero Waste Home. And she does stuff I haven't done yet, which is she brings a glass or metal jar to the grocery store when she's buying her meat or fish, and then avoids getting the packaging for those products. And that is really inspiring. And in fact, a bunch of people have opened bulk food stores because they were so inspired by her example. And I think bulk food stores used to be something that was quite common when I was a kid, but it's much less frequently found, at least where I live now. And so the fact that Bea is inspiring a whole generation to revitalize the purchase in bulk with packaging that you bring from home, that's really exciting and really cool. There are always people who are going to take creative reuse and green living further. My goal here is just to model how you can process the packaging in your life in a way that is more creative and more fun. And that's why I recommend you start with wine corks, because it's a super low risk item and it might inspire you to do your next project. Now, I put together a bunch of cork-themed project ideas on Pinterest, including really great instructions on how to prepare the corks to make them easier to cut and to make it safer while you're using a knife with the cork. And there are just a whole bunch of projects that involve making little creatures and ornaments. I see a lot with reindeers, and there are also people who make little boats by combining 3 corks together and putting a little sail on it. And I loved this Day of the Dead skull craft made from those corks that are they have like a bulbous part at one end. And I also saved an idea for you that I think is really clever, which is to put a slice from a wine cork under your chair and table legs to keep them from scratching hardwood floors. And finally, I just want to mention that the name Trashmagination, this was inspired by a quote from an artist named Aaron Kramer, and his quote was, "Trash is the failure of imagination," which I just smooshed together into Trashmagination. One of his most famous projects was an armchair made from wine corks, and I encourage you to check that out. I'll link to that from the show notes as well. Until next time, may you see trash as just another source of art and maybe flooring in your life.